best friends. I'm Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin, and today we are discussing Catching Fire by Suzanne Collins, not Mockingjay.
Not Mockingjay, because we had no clue what we were talking about last week.
I was a silly little goose, and I just forgot which book is the second one. The second one is Catching Fire, so that's what we're talking about.
So sure of it that we said it probably 8 times.
Listen. We can't all be perfect. I know you guys think we're so perfect. We've never made a mistake, but we do.
It's just like, in my head, you'd put the first 2 shortest titles first and then the longest one. And I think that's why I assumed.
But also Catching Fire just sounds like the climax. You know what I mean? But
it makes sense, though, because the Mockingjay is like the penultimate like symbolism for the rebellion, so I get it.
But I get it too. I do.
In my head, anyway, it was second.
Sometimes we're wrong, and we'll admit it, but it won't happen often. So
really, just take it in while you can.
Yeah, you guys should revel in this. I'm gonna go ahead and read the back of the book before we give our ratings, and I'm just reading it off of Goodreads. So it says, against all odds, Katniss Everdeen has won the Hunger Games. She and fellow District 12 tribute Peeta Mellark are miraculously still alive. Katniss should be relieved, happy even. After all, she's returned to her family and her longtime friend Gale. Yet nothing is the way Katniss wishes it to be. Gale holds her at an icy distance. Peeta has turned his back on her completely, and there are whispers of a rebellion against the capital, a rebellion that Katniss and Peeta may have helped create. Much to her shock, Katniss has fueled an unrest, and she's afraid she cannot stop. And what scares her even more is that she's not entirely convinced she should try. As time draws near for Katniss and Peeta to visit the districts on the capital's cruel victory tour. Victory tour. The stakes are higher than ever. If they can't prove without a shadow of a doubt that they are lost in their love for each other, the consequences will be horrifying. In Catching Fire, the second novel of the Hunger Games trilogy, Suzanne Collins continues the story of Katniss Everdeen, testing her more than ever before and surprising readers at every turn. Actually, I agree with that. That's not even dramatic.
Yeah, it was a surprise at every turn.
Yeah, it was serving.
Slay.
So what would you rate this book?
I personally like the second and third books of this series way more than the first. And I love the first, don't get me wrong. Like, you had to start with greatness to achieve more greatness.
Yeah.
But I love, like, secret rebellion type stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, this was right up my alley. And
so true.
I just like it when you start to, like, piece things together more, because like you were getting like subtle hints at the beginning and whatever, and so you're like, what's gonna happen? Like, we've got to go big from this, and like drop in the stuff about like District 13 and like the Mockingjay like trinkets and stuff everyone's passing around. It was so like interesting to me, and I was so excited about this book.
We are hoes for a secret society.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I also love this book. I would rate it a 10 out of 10 again. I love it as much as the first, and I think like this series totally holds up today. It was a very original story when it was written. Of course, we talked about how it inspired a bunch of other book series, but this was kind of the first of its kind. And the sequel in particular is serving. Like, it doesn't fall flat at all, because a lot of times with sequels, you're like, I want to be super excited about it like I was the first one, but it's just kind of letting us down in some way. And this one does not disappoint.
It's hard for, I think, authors to continue carrying that excitement and carrying the movement from like the prior books. And really, Suzanne Collins is one of the only authors that I've seen do it very, very successfully. Because like I said, even the third book is, better than the prior two. Like, they just keep getting better.
The third is my favorite.
You don't see that very often.
Yeah. She truly is fantastic at her craft, and I hope she knows that. I'm sure she does.
I hope you hear this, Suzanne, and you remember how good you are at your job.
But we'll kind of discuss the characters, how they've developed in the second book, and we have introduction to some new characters as well.
Yes, who are Amazing. They each just have, like, this is one of those books where the supporting characters are just as important, if not more important than the main characters.
Yeah, because of like the nature of this book where it's a rebellion, they all rely on each other and they all have their own role. And it is so cool to see them all come together.
Yes.
We'll start with Katniss, of course, our little main girl. You know how I was crying at the start of the first book because her and her cat hate each other?
Yeah.
I was tearing up at the start of the second book because she is now friends with Buttercup. They have a relationship now. And I think that's kind of a little metaphor for how Katniss has really opened her heart a lot since the first book. We see that too with her relationship with her mother growing. She's really trying to be less hardened. She's trying her best. It's hard because she's the face of rebellion.
Yeah.
But she is like, you know what? I should open myself to love and affection more. And I just think that's so sweet to see. But her life is not really fostering that for her.
No.
She is still being manipulated by everyone around her.
Yes, like the whole idea, like, and it's an ongoing theme again because they want Peeta and Katniss to seem like they're in love, and like it's to quell the urges of rebellion or whatever. But just the fact that they're like, the only way you can do this is if you guys get married at 17 and 18 respectively, that these people will not rebel. And it's like, well, that's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Like, what a weird thing to expect from a 17-year-old. And then not only that, but they're like, oh, it's not convincing enough. And so Peeta's like, well, I'll do you one better. I have impregnated this young lady. And they're like, good, throw her in there and see what happens.
They're like, perfect. That's great for the viewership.
Like, but it's funny.
It's funny that the Capitol then doesn't see the rebellion as their fault at all, even though they're like knowingly throwing impregnated, in love young couple into the Hunger Games again that literally just won a year ago. And they're like, this will get the people to just like kind of chill out.
It's the people going.
And they're like, surely this rebellion is not our fault.
It's just like, how fucked up. And they're like, oh my God, they're so in love. They're going to have a baby. Kill them. Kill them both. Kill all three of them.
Kill them both. We won't rest until everyone's dead.
Like, that is so messed up.
Yeah. It makes it like so convincing though. Because like, realistically, these people would be that evil.
Yeah, it's like these are true villains. Yeah. And I don't think I fully grasped that the first time I read this. I was like, oh my God, cute. Like, they are like really playing up that they love each other, even though like I know deep down that they do love each other and I know that this is gonna end. But at no point in time was I like, that's probably bad that they were willing to like murder a pregnant woman. I was just like, what a ploy, like these little smarties.
You were like, in your mind, you were probably thinking like, wow, yeah, like that's so unfair. Like they do need to stick it to the man. But like, yeah, that's an understatement, kiddo. You probably understood, but you didn't like understand.
No, I don't think I fully was aware of like the whole.
And that's normal for a child to like not fully grasp it. I think this book does a good job of like introducing these concepts to children in a way that is palatable to them still. Because clearly kids were eating this up.
It also just really makes you wonder too. And I feel like this is a really great metaphor for today's society. But like, I wonder what they are telling the children of the Capitol and the people of the Capitol for them to be like, this is the only way, is to sacrifice this pregnant woman and her lover.
It's probably giving Nazi Germany.
Yeah, it's very interesting because like that is things that definitely do happen.
Yeah.
Still.
And history repeats itself. Like these things happen like, over and over again. Like people, we are smart, but we're not smart.
And like people reading this book, they're like, oh my God, that's so terrible.
Like, I would never let that happen, too.
But it's happening.
Yeah, it's literally happening. Like, people are so easy to manipulate, and they don't want to admit that, but like, we are.
Or like the what's it called that they're trying to do in schools where they don't want to teach like certain parts of like American history.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. I know there's like a term for it, but yeah, they're whitewashing history pretty much.
Yeah, so and that's like kind of what it reminded me of.
Yeah.
Like they're probably taking out certain parts of like what actually happened in the rebellion to be like, 100%. No, these people tried to steal your land.
100%.
And then we have poor little PETA.
Oh, dude, my God.
Once again, he has done nothing wrong. He has done nothing wrong. In fact, I will die on this hill.
Sweet little angel of a boy.
Like, he is like masterminding like all these plans for them. He's like, yes, if I do this, like this is going to win the approval of the people, and then from here we can go to here. And he's like, yeah, we got it all figured out. And then you got Haymitch and Katniss behind the scenes being like, yeah, we'll let him keep doing that, but this is what we're gonna do. And then you have Haymitch, who's like, yeah, you keep doing that, but I have this my own rebellion agenda. Stuff going on here.
Dude, he cannot catch a fucking break, because PETA, he truly has a good heart, and he wants peace, and he wants what's best for the people. Like, of course he hates the Capitol, but he's like, I mean, all I can do is just live my little life. And they're like, no, PETA, sorry, you're coming along, because without you, we don't have Katniss, and without Katniss, we don't have a rebellion. And he's like, what the fuck did I do?
I know.
Like, to
and
get
it's like,
thrown into
Katniss is, they're like, Katniss is our rebellion, and you're just here. You need to just stay here.
But you're part of the narrative, and you're necessary.
But we're not going to tell you anything. It's so fucked up.
It's really fucked up. And I think that, obviously, Katniss was left out of plans this time too, because I think Haymitch knew that if he let Katniss in on it this time, she would have actually told PETA what's going on. And
but PETA is trustworthy. Like, I still think PETA would have been like, I don't want to do it, but if that's what we got to do.
100%. 100%. And we'll go ahead and jump to Haymitch really quick, because, you know, involves him. But I kind of think his train of thought was, the more people know a secret, the less likely it is to stay a secret.
That's fair.
I don't think that he was trying to betray either of their trusts at all. Again, it probably sucked for him to not be able to tell them.
Well, and I'm sure exactly what went through his mind is like, hey, if they get a hold of these two children and like torture them, they are going to tell, which is a very fair train of thought.
Yeah. But
also how sick.
It is sick, but I understand where he's coming from. Like, this is a very strange circumstance to be throwing children into in the first place. And I mean, it's the reality of their society. But yeah, how can you expect teenagers to hold on to that?
To not break under like the torture of the Capitol. Yeah,
exactly.
No, he was absolutely right for that, but I can understand how betrayed they probably felt by that.
Yeah, 100% valid.
But it really like in a strange way, it makes me like Haymitch more, because now, like, is he still a drunk? Yes. Was he using that as a cover? Also, yes.
Yeah.
Because like who knows how long did it say how long he had been doing this for? Like how long he had been trying to put this together? Because
I don't remember.
Like it couldn't have been like an overnight event. Like he had probably been working on this and trying to get things out since the last Hunger Games.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how long like this specific plan was in the works, but I'm sure that they knew that they would have to act, because the quarter quell, they knew it was going to be something wild. Yeah. And they were like, this is the perfect time to really get the rebellion off the ground.
Well, and I'm sure too, because they were doing like the tribute tour or whatever, he was like, this is the most ideal time for me to get in contact with other people who might be behind this. And so that might also be kind of where it started going. But either way, like, it makes you very proud of Haymitch,
because he's
taking that
doing
initiative.
something.
Yeah. Everyone thought he wouldn't. And I love that for him.
I know. Because he acts like he wouldn't. So it's a good strategy.
It was a very pleasant surprise.
Cinna, fuck. Dude. Ouchie. First of all, he is a true friend to Katniss. Like, Katniss is, for some reason, the Capitol insists that the victors of the Hunger Games have to have, like, some hobby that they, like, showcase. It's weird as fuck. I don't know. But Katniss is like, I don't know how to do anything other than hunt.
I wonder if it's like because they have to draw a line somewhere in terms of humanity and be like, hey, see, like, they're fine. They know how to make clothes. Like, do you see this cool thing?
They're expressing themselves artistically. So they're not emotionally damaged. So Cinna designs dresses for Katniss to pass off as her own hobby. He really gives her an out there. And of course, he continues to rebel through Katniss's wardrobe. The freaking wedding dress that catches on fire and turns into a Mockingjay is like the epitome of rebellion.
Fuck you.
And unfortunately, he loses his life for doing that.
Like, right as she's getting ready to, like, go into the hunger, like, back into the games too, like, just beats the shit out of him.
So with Effie, we do see some more of the character development she was starting to show towards, like, the end of her appearance in the first book. She's clearly, like, emotionally attached to Katniss and Peeta. And
which I think is so nice.
It is, but it's like she's also in a horrible position. And we talked about this last time about, like, if you're raised in the Capitol, like, do you truly recognize how you're the problem? And I don't think that she used to until Katniss and Peeta won the Hunger Games last year. And now they're being taken from her and being thrown back into the arena. And she's genuinely distraught about it. So she's starting to really feel the effects that obviously the people that are in the districts are like, yeah, like, no fucking shit. But she's never had that happen to her before.
Right. And I don't think you can necessarily, like, fully blame her either because she didn't grow up around that. And I think it is a big deal that she is experiencing some of that self-realization because that means she's willing to, grow and learn as a person. But
exactly. Like, this is the first time that her loved ones are being taken from her like that.
Yeah.
And it's something that everyone else has been dealing with for 75 years, but she's like,
but sometimes it does take it happening to you to understand, which sucks, but that's the only way you grow.
But again, it's realistic.
Yeah, it is very realistic. And I think, we've read the books, obviously. I think she'll continue to have that self-development and she'll continue to have that self-growth. So I'm very, very excited to talk more about Effie in the third book.
Me too. I kind of love her.
I love Effie. I also really like Plutarch, Heavensby. What a great character to introduce in this book. So it's very interesting to me because we had Seneca Crane in the first book, right? And Seneca Crane is just a sick, twisted individual to have come up with what he did for the Hunger Games. At the end, it is kind of hinted at that he had maybe like a little bit of a sentimental thing, and Caitlin has the quote, but he did inevitably die for allowing Katniss and Peeta to live and met an untimely end. We don't know how. In the movies, it says that he was
forced to eat the berries,
which I think is really nice and poetic. And
I personally love that.
I think that's a great twist.
So in the book, what page is this? Just kidding. My Kindle's not set to show me page numbers. So it says,
figure it out.
Figure it out. It's like the very beginning, though, like chapter 2. I have a problem, Miss Everdeen, says President Snow. A problem that began the moment you pulled out those poisonous berries in the arena. And then he goes on to say, if Seneca Crane had had any brains, he'd have blown you to dust right then. But he had an unfortunate sentimental streak. So here you are. Can you guess where he is? And Katniss is positive that he's been executed, which is, yeah, that's the
That's
price you
what
pay
happened.
when you betray the Capitol.
That's
And
right.
so I do love that in the Catching Fire movie, they're like, oh, you didn't want them to eat the berries? Well, you can eat the berries.
Bitch.
Like, mic drop.
But I do love the replacement for him. Plutarch is a very complicated character because he does have to play a sick and twisted individual to get into the role that he's in. I mean, you don't just get that job by being a nice guy. Like, he had to have proved himself somehow.
And he has contributed to the Hunger Games, like, in his role. So like he has had to do some fucked up shit.
And I'm sure that probably has stuck with him, but it's all for the bigger plan. And so like we said, we love a good rebel spy. He is probably the biggest key in the rebellion out of all of them. Like, I think he probably plays an even bigger role than Katniss does, because he's what made it happen. Like, he had to get himself into that position. He had to work behind the scenes. He had to, build this entire arena that plays directly into the rebels' path. And I'm not saying, Katniss doesn't have a big role to play, because she absolutely does. It's a lot to put on a 17-year-old shoulders. But Plutarch is like the mastermind behind it all.
He is putting in work. And also, like, if he were to be discovered at any point, like, he would face a horrible, horrible death.
Yeah. But he is a bad guy. I'm not gonna, like, he is a bad person.
You have to do bad things sometimes to see change. Yep. And I think this is a good example of that. Because if he hadn't done it, if he hadn't gotten into this role and designed that arena so that they could like make their escape, then
it would have been someone else
would have died. Like, or like nothing would have happened and the change wouldn't have happened.
Right. It's a great character.
We love. You know who else you love?
Finnick Odair.
Tabby's in love with Finnick Odair.
That was like one of the first like times in my life where I can like just distinctly remember being like, wow, like I'm attracted to that character.
Yeah. Finnick Odair's a bit of a sexual awakening.
He is truly, I think, where the whole morally gray comes from, maybe.
Ooh. Yeah, kind of
because you're just like, wow, like he's kind of a dick. And like, I don't think I don't think he's a good guy, but I like am intrigued by you. And then it turns out that he is on the good side. I don't know, obviously, if he's a good guy, but
I think he's honestly a fine guy. Like, he has a persona that he plays where he is an asshole and arrogant, and
which is our
awful
true
to be
morally
around.
Gray man.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a show, because deep down he has a much more like soft heart than he would ever
like he would do anything for his family. Finnick Odair is the blueprint.
He's the blueprint, and him being in love with Annie is so pure and heartbreaking because she's broken and he still
loves her.
So he's the blueprint for the morally gray character. Yeah.
You know what though?
What?
Sarah J. Maas had to have ripped off the entire, because like, think of Rhysand, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He is the douche who plays the bad guy, who has this bad persona, all to protect the people he loves, who is a broken girl who had like some traumatic thing happen to her where and like had to convince everyone that like he was the bad guy like to protect his family. And like
you're right.
Because then like the whole thing like with Feyre, like Feyre is basically written from Katniss Everdeen.
Mm-hmm.
How interesting.
Yes, which obviously Finnick specifically does have a different romantic interest in this book, but Annie is she's been shattered. And there is a point in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series where Feyre she's been quite shattered. And Rhysand still holds on to her specifically, even though she's not really in a spot where she's capable of returning his love.
Like, there's so many parallels between the books. It's funny.
That's actually so wild.
And they're
But I will
fighting.
say, even though like those characters, you know, follow really similar archetypes, I will say like the stories themselves are
Oh yeah,
very
no.
original. We're not
I'm
like
just saying,
coming
like,
for Sarah J.
no, no,
Maas.
no, no. I'm just saying, like, I think Finnick Odair was the basic blueprint that everyone is basing their morally gray characters off of.
Yeah. And at this point, that type of character has been further popularized by Rhysand in Sarah J. Maas's work. So
And
it's interesting.
this is where the true sickness started.
Yeah, this is it. This is where our mental unwellness started.
Yeah, that was a very like big turning point for me as a
No,
child.
you're right.
But I love Finnick Odair. I think he is awesome, and it's a very complex character that does a really great job of supporting our two main characters to the point where you're almost more interested in his backstory.
Yeah, like you could write a spinoff about him, and I would read it.
100%. Joanna, I think it's Joanna or Joanna. I can't remember how you pronounce it in the movie.
Remember. We'll call her Joanna.
She was a very interesting character again, who like had to come off at like as someone who plays a big game, who talks, you know, a lot of shit because she's protecting herself. Like, you can't be meek and, you know, sly at the same time. Like, you can't act like you have all these things going on, because people will start to question like where your loyalties lie.
Yeah.
And so she had to act like she was just in it for herself.
And it is like a matter of survival too, because they're, you know, to really solidify her role in getting these rebels out of the arena, she has to kind of go off with the careers. And to do that, she has to, again, play a part. So she knocks Katniss unconscious, smears blood on her so it looks like she's dead, and cuts the tracker out of her arm. Katniss, meanwhile, genuinely thinks Joanna's trying to murder her.
It was like fighting back. It was like, what in the fuck?
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame her. She's like, Jesus, fuck.
Well, yeah, because at that point,
Katniss
has no clue what's going on. She thinks like they are just trying their best to get out of there, has no plans for the future at that point. Like, gotta get out. And then Joanna's like, I'm gonna slice into your arm. She's like, whoa! Like,
poor Katniss, dude. But Joanna pulls it off. She pulls the performance of a lifetime. And I'm pretty sure in the end, we find out in Mockingjay that she does get captured by the Capitol for this.
Yeah.
So
like, she really risked it all for Katniss.
Yeah.
Putting her belief in a girl that she does not know.
Yeah. And who she probably thinks is weak in a lot of ways.
Because Joanna is older and she's been here before, and she's probably like, who is this child that we're putting all of our eggs in a basket for?
Yeah. Man, that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
Next, I want to talk about President Snow. Hear me out.
One of the best villains ever written.
He is a villain. Like, he is genuinely so scary because everything about him is realistic. His evilness is tangible in a lot of the politicians that we see. And it's like we talked about last time, this reality is not out of the question.
It's not far-fetched.
It's not far-fetched. It's like, this could be how things are 100 years from now. Like, it's not crazy. And so to see that is just terrifying. And he is truly evil, but you just are so attached to his character because of how well he's written. And I cannot wait to read the prequel.
Because he is written to be so intelligent and like, not only intelligent, but charismatic. And so there's times in the book where he's like speaking to Katniss, and like, you can't help but be like, okay, like, I can see why people would follow him, why people are listening to him, because like everything that he says sounds believable and sounds like it could be true. But like, obviously we know it's not, as the reader on the other side. But
there's like, a specific scene that I want to talk about right now, because it's like exactly what you're saying. So this is during the victory tour, he's already told Katniss, like, you gotta convince me that you're in love with this boy. And so they go on to do this interview, and President Snow is there too. It's the one in the Capitol, I believe. And so at the end of it all, like, he's joking with Katniss. Katniss is putting on a front, joking right back with him. At the end, he goes in and she kind of like signals to him with her eyes, like, did I do it? And he gives like an almost imperceptible shake of his head. And with just that, Katniss is like, her world scared. Comes crashing down. And so I'm just imagining like just this, he's got a pleasant look on his face, but he just gives a tiny little shake of his head that's like really signaling the end of your world. Like, that's how small of a movement he had to make for Katniss to be like, we gotta go, like, we gotta flee, I gotta get Gale, we gotta run. Like, her life was flashing before her eyes in that moment. And it was just such a small thing.
I love a really well-written villain, because I feel like a lot of the times in, a lot of the literature we read, you have this villain and they are very, very surface level. Like, the plans that they have set are very surface level, like, honestly are defeated relatively easy. Like, President Snow is like a mastermind. Like, it took them a while to take this man down. Like, he was truly, truly an adversary. And even at the end, like, and we'll talk more about it next week too. Like, even at the end, like, it was still kind of touch and go there. Like, and it could have gone either way.
He puts up such a fight that takes much more from them along the way. It is like, genuinely, I cannot wait to talk about the third book, because it is a wild ride. And the thing about President Snow too is, like,
he wasn't always evil.
No, he wasn't. And even though he is so evil now, you still love reading about him because of how intriguing he is. Like, and that just again shows how good of an author Suzanne Collins is.
I think that's why I am so excited to read the prequel, because it is about him. And I just want to know, like, how the system failed him so badly that he decided he had to become worse than it in order to survive. And that is something that happens a lot, is that, like, you are given a bad hand, and so you either have the choice to fight against it or make yourself worse than it.
Yeah, it's like, if you can't beat him, join him.
And do better.
He sure did. If you can't beat him, take it over.
Yeah. And so I love characters like that, where there's just so many layers to it, because a lot of the time, like I said, a lot of the time, like, villains are just black and white. Like, they're just bad and they're evil and they're terrible and there's no rhyme or reason for it. Whereas with him, like, there's a backstory and it is important.
Yeah. And we've never read it before, and I'm so excited to read it.
I'm so excited.
But then it's like, I hope I'm not attracted to him in the prequel.
No, he's like a fucking baddie. I just know it. And like, the prequel is written about, I think, the 10th Hunger Games, and this is what, the 75th? Like, he was 18 in the prequel.
Ooh.
So young. Like, he's old as fuck, and like, is still just absolutely terrorizing the world. Like, good for him.
Love that for you. He really built his little empire.
Yeah, like, he put some work in for that.
Next, I would like to talk about a character that I do not admire, and that is Gale. I hate Gale.
Fuck Gale. He's terrible.
I got a couple things to say about Gale. First of all, fuck him. And let me explain. Fuck him for not letting Katniss take her winnings to pay for his family's survival. Like, he wants to act so high and mighty to refuse this money that she literally fought for her fucking life to win and come back to them and provide for their families, and he won't take the money. No,
like, at least give it to your mom.
Yeah, fuck you. Because then it's like, what was it all for?
Right.
What did
like,
Katniss
she did this for
fight for her life for? Like, she could have just died and everything would have been the same then. Stupid bitch. Also, fuck him for the stupid little bitch ass kiss that he, like, surprised Katniss with. And then he was like, oh, I just wanted to do it at least once. And then just, like, pretends that it never happened. If, like, you can't talk about your feelings, just say that.
When he did that in like the movies too, like you could just tell like he had ulterior motives. Like when it
Yeah.
happened,
Oh
he was
yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, this is for the cameras. This is for anybody watching. Like I'm trying to start some
Because he
shit."
waited till they went back to the gate
Yeah.
or the fence. He didn't do it in the woods when
No,
they're
like
out in
it was
private.
not like a heartfelt anything. Like that was strictly like a power move.
And it sent Katniss reeling because she was like, "Oh shit, like I don't want to hurt his feelings too." But then
Mm-hmm.
he didn't bring it up, so she was like, "Okay, maybe this is fine." And
Yep.
so yeah. And then it lingers though, because then later, whenever he gets like whipped, and I mean, he's in rough shape, like he could die,
Yeah.
she has like a fucking crisis of
Right.
emotions. And she's like, no, 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 I don't want him to die. Like, I love him.
Because she doesn't know how to process her emotions properly.
Yes.
Like,
And she's like, clearly there's so much left unsaid between us because he kissed me, and now that I'll never get to be.
like what a manipulative ass.
Yeah. Like,
And
obviously, she would have been distraught at him being in that position no matter what. But the
right.
fact that he had kissed her, it like opened up this whole new level of confusion for her.
Well, and he is just so clearly like someone who craves control over everything.
Yeah.
Because and like you see that whenever Katniss is like telling him about like the rebellion, like he immediately was like, yes. Like I want to join the rebellion. I want to lead it here in District 12. And that's because he wants to like have just a sliver of control in his life, I think. And because Katniss is now PETA, I feel like it was almost exacerbated. And so he's like, well, if I can't control this situation, I'm going to control this one. And
Yeah.
so, like, that's not the person that you want in charge of anything.
No. And it ends up like we'll have more to talk about on that in the third book, because
Yeah.
it
ends up
goes
being
to his
bad.
head too much and he fucks up.
Big time. He fucks up big time.
So we're going to talk about that. I'm sure if you guys have read this series, you know what we're referring to. But fuck him.
Oh, it's
fuck
bad.
Gale.
He's terrible.
He's a stereotypical man.
He was written for the boys.
He's a boy's boy.
He's
and that's not a compliment.
It's derogatory.
Derogatory. So lastly, we just want to touch on like Prim and Katniss's mom, because a lot happens with them in this book that you don't see in the first. And first of all, I did really like at the beginning of the book, Katniss is explaining how she's working on forgiving and trusting her mom again, because she deserves that. Like, she is a child and she deserves to have
a good relationship,
the love of a mother.
Right.
Unfortunately, Katniss is ripped from her sense of normalcy almost immediately. But it shows how much the Winnings have changed their lives. Like, Prim and Katniss's mom are able to work on like helping people. They work as little healers, I guess you'd call them. I don't know if they like use a certain word for it, but
yeah,
they're
apothecaries.
Apothecary, yeah. So they make medicine and they heal people when they can. And Prim is learning her mom's trade and she's successful at it. She's thriving and her mom's doing really well.
She's not like catatonic anymore.
Yeah. And it's so good to see that. I mean, it sucks because the only reason that they weren't thriving beforehand is because they were starving to death.
Right.
And now
it's like, now you're awake because you got your money back? Like,
you little hoe. No,
okay.
It's like, now you're awake because you're not worried that your children are going to die of starvation at any given moment. Like, I get it.
Still so bad.
No, I know, but she deserves a little bit of grace because she been through it.
I just thought it was really, really cool. It's not cool, but when they were watching like the videos and stuff, or like footage from like the past reapings and whatever, how like you could see Katniss's mom in one of them, and like her friend was the one that had gone to the Hunger Games with Haymitch and like ended up dying. And so Katniss's mom, whenever she's talking with Haymitch, she was like, it's starting again. And so we're gonna see, I think, more of that in book 3 with the rebellion. Like, obviously there had been like maybe rebellion attempts in the past, and so I want to know like how involved Katniss's mom was with that. And so I think,
because
she's gonna be
she's got a fighter spirit, because otherwise where would Katniss get this from?
Right.
Because it's not her dad. Her dad was very much a loving, gentle man.
Yeah.
And so I think that fight is all from Katniss's mom, but it's just been extinguished,
squashed. Yeah. Like, she has just been absolutely crushed by the world. But just seeing her interacting with Haymitch, like, obviously they have like a different type of relationship than what has been led on. And so I'm very, very excited to talk about her mom in the next book.
Agreed. That's it for like the characters, really. I mean, obviously there are more side characters, but we just touched on some of the main ones. We're going to throw out some thoughts and concerns here. First of all, and I know this is the entire point, but the concept of a victory tour is so horrifying.
It's so jacked up.
Like, okay, children, you survived. So now you have to go to each of the districts and stare at the families and loved ones of the other kids that did not survive.
Really rub it in their face. Like, really just squash their hopes and dreams.
Especially because they take like the literal families of the districts that didn't die and they put them on stage with the victors. Like, it is fucked, dude.
Like, that is truly heinous. And like, it's just like the Capitol is twisted. Like, we're gonna keep reminding you of how you tried to uprise, and like, we are just gonna grind you to the ground.
Truly.
In the worst way possible.
They're good at what they do, because that's villainous.
Isn't it just crazy though how like 75 years have passed since this, and like somehow each year it just gets worse. Like, instead of it slowly like fading and being forgotten about, and maybe ties start to get a little stronger, they're like, no, each year I'm gonna make it harder for you.
Well, it does, because I mean, President Snow he's attempting to hold on to this power that they have, so he just keeps driving it further and further, because he knows that the rebellion is not squashed. And so he's like, let me just keep showing you that you're not the ones in control. And he makes it so scary.
So abundantly clear.
Also, speaking of like the horrible, shitty things that the Capitol does, that fucking liquid that they use to throw up so they can eat more.
That was just one thing that like really stuck with me. And it's like, they obviously are doing just like worse things, but like, you just have to remember, like, show like signs of like gluttony and like wealth and power are all things that like people in the Capitol just latch on to. And so the fact that Katniss was like, oh my god, like, I physically cannot eat any more food at this feast, they're like, that is going to really what's the word I'm looking for, like, offend everyone holding this feast. So drink this and throw your food up and keep eating, because this is a sign of power. Like, what?
And of course, that is a massive slap in the face to people who are watching children starve to death where they're from.
Another like thing that it doesn't have to do with the victory tour, but like they started taking all of like the original peacekeepers and stuff out of the different cities and like replacing them with like worse people. And so whenever Darius, who was like a relatively good person, who was a peacekeeper, genuinely I think cared about the people in Katniss's territory and like was just dealing with what he was given and trying to make the best of it. Like, when he showed up as an AVOX at the Capitol, like, that made me so sad. And I don't know why it made me so sad, but like, that was one that like really,
because these people, the peacekeepers, of course, not the horrible, shitty ones, but the ones like Darius, who they were just doing the job so that their families could eat. And, they were doing it in a way that was graceful and respectful of the people in the districts. Like, understanding that of course they're not welcome there as a peacekeeper, and really just trying to blend in,
make the best of it.
Yeah, and be there so that someone worse doesn't come do the job,
right?
Which is exactly what ends up happening, because he was too good of a person for that role.
It was just so sad.
Yeah, it really is.
And then the idea of like the quarter quell too, like you already have the Hunger Games, and the Hunger Games are bad, and each year they get worse, but then they're like, we're gonna top it off.
Yeah.
And have like this super duper special 75th anniversary of the Hunger Games.
I kind of love
like like get ready, guys. This is the Olympics of the Hunger Games, and it's gonna be insane.
Like the one where they had children of previous victors be the tributes. I was like, oh my God. So it just goes to show
that's why none of them have kids.
Yeah, even when you're a victor, you haven't won anything.
Yeah.
Like if anything, the target on your back is bigger.
Yeah. Like, what a crazy concept.
It's wild. It's so evil.
I'm sure the year of the 24th Hunger Games, they're like, okay, guys,
next year's big, huh?
Yeah, next year's it's a big year for us as a company. Like, what are we going to do?
They were sitting around like a conference room.
Yeah,
like
they were in like a
meeting.
boardroom.
Yeah. They're like, okay, guys. They throw up a PowerPoint.
Like, here's what I'm thinking, like, as a way to absolutely scar these people for the rest of their lives.
They're like, you know what? It's good, but it's lacking. It's
like they have a whole suggestion box for like, what do you want to see in the 25th annual Hunger Games?
Oh, absolutely. You know they do.
God, terrible.
You just have them at every street corner in the Capitol. Yeah. Suggestion box.
One thing I did really like in this book was just that there was like immediate camaraderie between like some of the opponents, even if they didn't like each other, like even if they were very wary of each other, there was just a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
Between everyone that was there, because they'd already been through this. And so I think there was like just some underlying respect for every single one of the opponents because they fought to be there. And I thought that was really cool.
And they're like, we know things are going to get worse.
Like, we're going to have to kill each other.
But they were like, let's just set that aside for now. And because that's all we can do.
So, terrible situation, but I did like that they at least had some respect for the others they were with.
So next a couple little symbolism things. So first of all, the symbols of rebellion from the first book all carry over through the second and third book as well. So the Mockingjay, Rue's song, the salute from District 12, and Cinna's wardrobe design. Yeah, I know. And it's, oh God, yeah, it's heartbreaking. The victory tour that takes them to District 11, Katniss is like, I have to say something, like I have to express my gratitude for Rue. And so a guy in the crowd whistles Rue's song, and then they all salute Katniss with the District 12 salute.
And that guy gets murdered.
Yes, Katniss witnesses the peacekeepers murder the guy who whistled, and she knows that this is so much more serious than she realized.
And that's really when everything, started getting worse too. Because immediately after that happens, District 8 rebels. Like they have like a whole uprising. And so they're like, "Ooh, this is bad."
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure they would have, well, maybe they cut the cameras because Effie is like, I don't know what just happened. The camera's cut out. So maybe they did cut the cameras.
I think they did, but Katniss still saw it. But still, like, that started to spark like the uprise in District 8.
Yeah. So of course it probably would have been even worse if the Capitol had kept the cameras rolling and the people saw how the peacekeepers reacted. Next, President Snow's like roses that he wears, and Katniss even like smells the scent of blood when he's near. So these, of course, symbolize the bloodshed he's responsible for. And to me, it really, like with his name being President Snow and the red rose, it really creates that imagery in my mind of like spilled blood against white snow. And so I just think like that's genius.
He's smart. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And it's like Katniss recognizes, yes, he has genetically modified this rose to smell like roses and blood. Like, it's fucked up.
He was like, I need something super special if someone can whip that up for me.
Yeah. And they're like, sure, of course. Also the arena being a clock face.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this could symbolize a couple things. So with a clock face, of course, it's like, it symbolizes like time is ticking, it's counting down to something. So it's like, I think what the game makers intended was like, oh, it's counting down to their deaths. Like, isn't that cute? But I think like what Plutarch was really thinking is it's counting down to
the rebellion.
He's like, it's counting down to fucking go time. He's like, T-minus 3 days or however long, and shit's kicking off.
He even says that, like, at the feast at President Snow's mansion, he shows Katniss like his watch face, and was like, it starts at midnight. And she was like, fuck does that mean? He like walked away. He's like, when you like to know. And so whenever they figure out it's a clock, she's like, oh
yeah. And on his watch face, the way he brushed his finger across it, and it like revealed a Mockingjay too. So Katniss was like, okay, I sort of understand what you're telling me, but I don't.
But like, I don't know if I can trust you.
Yeah. She's like, surely you're telling me that you're a part of the rebellion, but she's like, I don't understand what you want me to glean from this conversation. So yeah,
that was very smart on his part.
It was, and it helped her, of course, figure out when they were in the arena what was going on.
So we have some discussion questions. One of them, Caitlin just wants to piggyback off of last week's discussion. If you want to go ahead.
Okay, so this was really my aha moment, because of course, when you first asked the question last week of like, can you imagine if TikTok existed when the Hunger Games came out? I was thinking like
we had to do like a deep dive into some TikTok stuff.
Because I was unfamiliar with the Eddie Munson thing on TikTok. And if you guys are unfamiliar with it, if you want to live in ignorance, I respect that.
That's okay.
Ignorance is bliss. However, if you're curious what the hell we're talking about, just type in to your TikTok search. I typed in Eddie Munson and then the word cringe like autofilled, and I was like, yeah, that's probably what I'm looking for. It was offensive. So look into that.
Truly crimes against humanity.
Truly scary. It's what nightmares are made of. But you asked, of course, like what would happen if this came out when TikTok existed.
And we delivered.
I want to say something similar did happen. And of course, TikTok didn't exist. But the fucking, like, I don't even know what to call it. Like,
are you going to
yes, one? But I'm trying to think of like a word, like the trendification. Okay. The trendification of something. And this wasn't even done ironically. This was done in all seriousness.
This was purposeful.
The Hanging Tree song makes an appearance in the third book, Mockingjay. And so for the third movie, they actually like produced this song. They wrote a little melody to it, and it's a song. It's about the government slaughtering its people who are rebelling against them. People took this song, threw a fucking dubstep beat remix on it, and blasted it on the radio for months.
In the clubs, in the radio, in
people
the grocery store.
Clubbing to this song. You were driving to work and this song just came on. Like, are you? Like, sir, read the room.
It is about like the hangman's noose. Like,
it is about getting executed for your crimes against the government. I remember
that. Can you imagine how much that song would have trended on TikTok?
That's what I'm saying. This is what made me think of it. Because if TikTok existed, this for sure would have so happened. Bad. And I just think people are so silly goofy sometimes, because why would you do that?
They would have made the most disrespectful video. obsessed with that song.
Like, well, why would you do that? Because again, this song, while it's a made-up song from a made-up universe in a book series, it is realistic in ways that are truly not that far removed from today's time.
Because there were people who were enslaved, who were tread upon like that, who were hung off of trees. Like, it's so insensitive.
I just want you guys to do a little Google search and just like type in, you know, like history of lynchings, and, you know, just kind of educate yourselves about why it's not appropriate to turn that into a remix. But people did it, and it was on the radio.
Like, the song for the movie, that's fine, whatever. Like,
well, because it was made in all seriousness.
Yeah, like, and they weren't trying to do anything with that. But
no, like that in itself was appropriate because they were using it to represent, like, yes, we're rising up against the government. People are losing their lives for it. Like Cinna did lose his life in the rebellion. And this song was kind of a tribute to that. What's not appropriate is to turn it into a club dance remix.
Or like, who was the fucker who was like, hey, can I buy the rights to this song so I can play it on air, like on the radio?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, of course you can.
And it happened everywhere. And of course, the people who produce the movies and stuff are probably the ones responsible for this. I don't blame Suzanne Collins for anything. I think
she did not do this. This is not on her.
In all sincerity, and she wrote it in a way that was genuine and respectful. What happened with the media and
was not
marketing
respectful.
For the movie was not respectful. And I had sort of repressed that memory.
Mm-hmm.
And just something about like pondering your question about TikTok brought it back to my mind.
Well, because again, like, we were so young when these came out that we were like, fuck yeah, I love this movie and I love these characters. Yeah. And I'm obsessed with every single thing that comes out of this. And so when they're like, we've made this song available for you on the radio, we're like, hell yeah.
Yeah. And I probably was like, yes, I absolutely, like, I really enjoy these movies and I want to consume all of the media related to these movies
without thinking about, you know, the negative repercussions of that.
And I can guarantee you that if I ever sang along to this song, I was not pondering the actual meaning of the lyrics.
No, but like as a fully functioning adult with a working brain now, I'm like, oh my god,
with a fully developed brain, a fully developed frontal cortex, I can tell you now that it's not appropriate.
It's not.
Don't listen to that, or don't sing along to that like that. You can listen to it in the context of the movie, and that's it.
Yeah, no. So to answer this week's question, last week's question, it would be bad.
It would be so disrespectful.
It would not be good. People don't know how to act right. Like, they get on the internet and they're like, I can do whatever I want to and post whatever I want to.
Lose their privileges sometimes.
And it's like, you do have a digital footprint and you should keep that in mind when you post things.
God, no,
you can find anything.
That girl specifically who makes the Eddie Munson videos, she's still doing what she's doing. She should be in jail. And I found out that I had her blocked in doing this research because I don't know if it was the Eddie Munson video that I saw. You guys will immediately find her.
It's probably number 1 on there.
It was.
Yeah.
And it's upsetting and you won't be able to sleep.
I blocked her from that video.
Yeah, it could have been that video. It could have been something else because she's still doing it to this day.
Terrible.
Wow.
Question 2. Moving on. We talked quite a bit about the love triangle that Katniss is forced into. So let's discuss how that has developed over the second book.
Yeah. So let's start with Katniss and Gale, because I feel like there's a little less, like it would be a little less of a conversation. Katniss, of course, loves Gale. She has said that from the beginning. She cherishes her friendship with him and she cares for him deeply. She is upset because when she gets home, you know, she fought for her life to get back to those that she loves. Gale's ignoring her. He's not showing up. He's mad at her. He's not showing up to the woods. And she is like, she's fully about to accept that this is her new reality. And when one day he just shows up, he's mad at her because she pretended to be in love with Peta so that she could live, so that she could survive and make it back to her mom and sister and Gale and his family. And that didn't sit right with him. He was like, do you know how embarrassing that is for me? He's like, do you know how embarrassing it is for me to have these people show up from the Capitol and be like, oh, you're her cousin because you're too attractive and we don't want them to think. And he was like, no, I do want them to think. Like, do you know how embarrassing?
Like, I'm sorry. Like, were you in here, like, absolutely scared for your life every single day like I was? I don't think you were.
Yeah. He is genuinely upset with her. And, well, doesn't even have the balls to say that to her.
The audacity of men in, like, is actually insane.
Truly. And just the fact that he does not even acknowledge that he's acted like this. He just shows up back in the woods. And Katniss is like, oh, thank God. Like, I didn't lose my one and only friend in this world.
Because Peta's mad at her, too, for good reasons. For totally valid and fair reasons. But
Peta is also mad. Not mad that she doesn't have a crush on him. Mad that she lied to him.
Everyone has lied to him forever.
Yeah. So that's the thing with Gale. We already talked about the manipulative kiss, and he fucking sucks. Fuck Gale.
But again, at the time, I was like, yeah, you did betray him.
You hurt him.
You hurt him.
Well, when I read the books as a kid, I was actually more Team Peta.
For some reason, I just had like this like deep rooted hatred for Peta.
No, I don't know people why. People did. They were either Team Gale or Team Peta. It was the Twilightification.
Wrong team.
I mean, you didn't know. Your brain was underdeveloped.
Like, this is your best friend. Like, how could you betray him like that? And then I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me?
And the way that my teenage brain saw it, or preteen brain is more appropriate, the way that my little brain saw it is, Gale, you guys are best friends. Like, you're not in a romantic relationship. And so I saw it as him, like, being unreasonable.
Yeah, which he was unreasonable.
Yeah. And so
you're not wrong.
But, I mean, it's funny because what we really should have been looking at it
was like, did you almost die?
Yeah, no. Like, ultimately, we're Team Katniss.
Like, I can do whatever the fuck I want to because I'm the only one who did anything for any of you.
Oh, I wish she would have just gone off on him. So,
but no, because she's insecure. Because she's a 17-year-old. And she was like, no, I can't lose this only sense of stability in my life. Like,
it's fucked up, dude. So then, terrible. Katniss and Peta.
I am on Team Peta now. Actually, I'm on Team everyone should mind their own business and maybe not to be in a romantic relationship.
Yeah, 100%. And Peta, of course, I'm sure those feelings for Katniss haven't gone away. Of course, they would still exist because those feelings don't just disappear.
No.
But he eventually is able to be the mature one and be like, Katniss, I want to apologize for the way I acted when we were coming back from the games. I just was obviously really hurt. And I want us to be friends. Like, I want to be a team again. And Katniss is like, thank God. And then they get, of course, thrown back into it. And they have to pretend to be in love some more and then pretend to be pregnant together. So it's like really upsetting for her. A horrible experience.
But I mean, it was such a smart move on Peta's part because I think if he hadn't like surprised her the way that he did, she would have not been able to perform well under that pressure.
Yes, and she knows that about herself.
Yeah. And so I don't think she's mad at all. Like, she even said like that was a really smart thing to do, but how sad.
It really is. And I just ultimately, it comes back to just feeling bad for Katniss because she has not asked for any of this. She is a pawn. She's an important pawn, but she's a pawn in the rebellion.
Well, and she's just so tired. Like
she just wants some rest,
tired
man.
and like
she's been single-handedly taking care of her family since she was 11 years old. She has not had a single fucking break.
Like, give her a break. And then on top of that, like, she's got this love triangle, or she's got like this, whole thing that she's trying to convince the world she's in love with them, while also being like the face of the rebellion. Like,
yeah,
like you pick what you need me to do.
She's like, I can't do both.
Like,
it's exhausting.
That's a lot for someone to take on.
Yeah, it's genuinely upsetting, and I feel bad for her.
And like, unfortunately, like, I hate to say it too, but it just continues to get worse. Her love life just simply does not ever get better.
No, it doesn't. And I think she realizes her reality pretty early on in the second book. She's like, okay, because Haymitch is straight up with her. He's like, you understand that this means there's no out now. Like, you're essentially engaged to PETA.
And if you ever leave him, like, there's going to be like issues.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, like, when you put it straight up like that, like
that's a little scary.
That's terrifying, because again, she is a child. All in all, amazing book, upsetting concepts.
Fantastic piece of literature, though.
Yes, 100%. And I cannot wait for next week when we discuss the third book, Mockingjay,
which is not catching fire, believe it or not.
It's Mockingjay. And I'm so excited to read that and talk about it with you guys.
The week after that, we are going to be discussing the prequel to the Hunger Games series, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and that will, besides the mini-sode, kind of wrap up the Hunger Games series.
So some really good books coming up next couple weeks. So go ahead, get started on Mockingjay. We'll talk to you next week, and as always,
let's get lit.